Hello and welcome everyone to my Commander deck tech on Selvala Explorer Returned. This is a competitive build of Selvala, focusing on comboing off using infinite mana as quickly and efficiently as possible. So why should you play Selvala? The deck is based on the classic Elf Ball strategy that's been around in Magic since its inception. Mana dorks are already incredibly powerful, and our auto includes in any competitive deck that has green in it and wants to run creatures. This deck utilizes these already powerful cards to their full potential. So what exactly does Selvala do? Well, she's basically a glorified mana dork. She gives you green mana, life gain, and card draw, all for the low price of tapping her. Unfortunately, the deck got hit hard by the Paradox Engine ban. Selvala plus Paradox Engine was a 2-card combo that basically allowed you to draw your entire deck, but even with the ban, this deck still works fantastically. Like most C-EDH decks, Selvala wins through combos, so let's go over the combos that are in the deck. Umbra Mantle, Sword of the Perrunes or Staff of Domination, plus Elvish Archdruid, Priest of Titania, Morrowind the Nurturer, or Selvala Heart of the Wilds equals infinite mana. Umbra Mantle plus Morrowind the Nurturer or Selvala Heart of the Wilds equals infinite mana. I wanted to go into more detail about the interaction of Selvala Heart of the Wilds and Morrowind the Nurturer when equipped with Umbra Mantle. Unlike the other big mana producers where you need other elves in play to enable them to tap for the appropriate amount of mana, you only need to attach Umbra Mantle to these two and untap them to power them up enough to net mana each Umbra Mantle untap. Wirewood Symbiote plus Mirror Entity plus Elvish Archdruid, Priest of Titania, Morrowind the Nurturer, or Selvala Heart of the Wilds equals infinite mana. You start this combo off by tapping a big mana producer for 3 or more mana. You then activate Mirror Entity where X equals 1 or more, which turns Wirewood Symbiote into an elf. You can then untap the big mana producer by activating Wirewood Symbiote and bouncing itself. You then cast the Wirewood Symbiote and repeat indefinitely for infinite mana and infinite untaps. Once you have infinite mana, you can use Selvala's Parley ability to draw your entire deck. Then you can win through the myriad of finishers. The safest way to win is either cast Angel's Grace and mill out your opponents, or you can use Savage Summonings to cast Walking Ballista for X equals infinite and do direct damage to all your opponents. The way you want to win is up to you, so evaluate the situation you're in when going off to figure out which is the best win condition to use. Now let's go over the cards that I run in the deck. Ramp is one of the most important parts of the deck. You want to combo off as soon as possible, and ramp helps you give the mana to achieve this goal. Luckily, the deck has green in it, so you have access to some of the best ramp in the game. Selvala Explorer Returned is one of the best mana dorks in the deck. She has a peculiar way that she taps for mana. It's completely inconsistent. Sometimes she'll tap for 4 green, and other times she'll tap for 0. So I decided to do a little bit of math to figure out the average amount that she taps for, so you can better evaluate her, and so you can know how much mana you can typically expect her to tap for. First, let's find out the ratio of land and non-land permanents in our deck. We run 27 lands, so 72 non-land permanents divided by 99 cards in the deck equals a .727 chance of hitting a non-land permanent. An average competitive deck is going to run 29 lands, so 70 non-land permanents divided by 99 cards in the deck equals a .707 chance of hitting a non-land permanent. So that means you can use this equation to figure out how much she taps for. Arbor Elf, Boreal Druid, Elvish Mystic, Finhorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves are the 1 CMC Elf mana dorks and are some of the most important cards in the deck. One of the main goals of the deck is to get above 3 elves, and these are some of the best ones to have on the battlefield. Although Birds of Paradise isn't an elf, it's still an incredibly powerful 1 CMC mana dork, and it's definitely a great card to have in the deck. Elvish Archdruid and Priest of Titania are already powerful mana generators in any elf tribal deck, but they're also a key part of the infinite mana combos in our deck. Elvish Reclaimer and Crop Rotation are used to tutor Gaia's Cradle onto the battlefield, which is the most powerful land in the deck and will end up netting you a ton of mana. Elvish Harbinger can tap for any color of mana. Heritage Druid is used to turn your non-mana generating elves into mana dorks and can be used to ignore summoning sickness since its ability gets around it. Morrowind the Nurturer works like Elvish Archdruid and Priest of Titania, a big difference being you need to play the elves after she comes out. Oracle of Mul Daya is already a powerful creature for most green decks, however she's even better in this one, allowing you to play past your lands on top of your deck to ensure you get mana when you parley. Wood Elves is used to grab a force out of your deck onto the battlefield untapped, and he benefits from the myriad of elf synergies that are in the deck. Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, is already a solid mana producer, however her true purpose of being in the deck is to go infinite with Umbra Mantle. Green Sun's Zenith is used to grab Dryad Arbor for 1 mana, effectively turning this card into a 1 CMC mana dork. Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, and Soul Ring are the mana rocks that go into just about every competitive deck, and is what really gives competitive decks a chance to win way too quickly, like on turn 1 or turn 2. Carpet of Flowers is one of the most powerful ramp spells for competitive decks, since the C-EDH meta is so heavily blue. Exploration is great in just about every deck running green. It's especially good in this deck since we want to ramp quickly, and Selvala keeps her hand full so you can take full advantage of the additional land plays. Smothering Tithe is already an auto-include in any deck running white, however it's even more powerful in this deck since it triggers each time you parley, and enables you to basically go infinite if you have Umbra Mantle or Sword of the Pararunes attached to Selvala, or if you have Staff of Domination on the battlefield. Card draw is an important part of any deck, especially in competitive Commander. Selvala Explorer Return doesn't only tap for mana, she also lets you draw a card. However, be cautious when using her ability, because your opponents get to draw too. Beast Whisperer draws us a card each time we cast a creature, which is good since this is a creature heavy deck. We don't have many high power creatures in the deck to take advantage of Selvala Heart of the Wilds, but competitive Commander doesn't use much high powered creatures, so we hopefully should benefit more from her effect since we run a decent chunk of creatures. Sensei's Divining Top is already an incredibly efficient top of deck manipulation card, however it's even more useful in this deck since Selvala cares about the top of your deck. Staff of Domination has card draw attached to it just in case you have a ton of mana laying around. Sylvan Library is an auto-include in any deck running green. It's even more powerful in this deck since it works similarly to Sensei's in the way it can manipulate the top of your deck for Selvala. The deck doesn't have a ton of card advantage since we mostly want to depend on Selvala for card draw. Since Selvala is in the command zone, we can guarantee to get her every game. Instead of running a ton of card draw in the 99, it's much more efficient to run cards that can untap creatures, since those cards already have great synergy within the deck. Copperhorn Scout untaps all your creatures when it attacks, which includes your mana dorks and Selvala, so she essentially doubles your mana that you have access to that turn. Corian Ranger bounces a force to untap one of your creatures. Bouncing a force can be abused in net mana if you haven't made any land drops that turn, or if you can make additional land drops. Wirewood Symbiote can be used to untap a creature by bouncing an elf. Like Corian Ranger, you might be able to net mana if you bounce a mana dork and play it and tap it using the myriad of effects in the deck that ignore summoning sickness. Wirewood Lodge is a way to untap one of your creatures attached to a land, which gives it very little opportunity cost for including it in the deck. 1000-Year Elixir ignores summoning sickness for your mana dorks, and even lets you untap one for 1 mana, which can easily lead to you netting mana. The most important function of Staff of Domination is its ability to untap creatures, especially when it's used to get infinite mana. The whole deck is built around going infinite with Sword of the Perrunes and Umbra Mantle, so obviously they have great synergy with the deck. The deck needs to run a lot of tutors to grab the correct parts of the combos when you need them. Elvish Harbinger tutors up an elf and puts it on top of the library. Elvish Reclaimer and Crop Rotation tutors up any land onto the battlefield. You can use Fauna Shaman to discard a creature to search up any creature from your deck to your hand. Recruiter of the Guard searches up any creature with toughness 2 or less, which is most of the important creatures in the deck. Stoneforge Mystic tutors up any equipment from your deck to your hand, and has an added ability of cheating them into play for 2 mana, which dodges counter spells. Finale of Devastation tutors up any creature from your deck or graveyard to the battlefield, plus it gives you something to dump a ton of mana into to pump up your creatures, which can potentially kill opponents with combat damage. Green Sun Zenith is mostly used to tutor up Dryad Arbor, however it can also grab any green creature from your deck and put it on the battlefield. Open the Armory and Steel Shaper's Gift tutors up any equipment from your deck and puts it into your hand. Court of Calling tutors up any creature from your deck and puts it on the battlefield. Eladamri's Call tutors up any creature from your deck and puts it in your hand. Enlightened Tutor gets any artifact or enchantment from your deck and puts it on top of your deck, which then can be easily accessed using Parley. Summoner's Pact tutors up any green creature from your deck and puts it in your hand. Worldly Tutor puts any creature from your deck on top of your deck, which then can be easily accessed using Selvala. This deck leans more on comboing off as soon as possible, rather than trying to control the board and disrupting what your opponents are trying to do. Despite this, the deck still runs some efficient removal spells to deal with the extremely problematic cards that you might encounter while playing. Walking Ballista is used as one of our combo finishers, but it also works great as an X spell that you can dump a bunch of mana into. Then you can start machine gunning low toughness creatures your opponents control. It also can be reloaded for 4 mana if you have some extra mana laying around. We run Wrath of God in case of an emergency if we absolutely need it, but that's the only board wipe we use. The deck is incredibly reliant on our creatures, so we don't want to run a bunch of board wipes, because we'd often hit our side of the board much harder than our opponents. Beast Within and Generous Gift are 2 of the most versatile removal spells in Commander, since they can hit any permanent. This deck draws a lot of cards, so exiling a green card for the alternative casting cost for Force of Vigor should be relatively easy. Nature's Claim is an incredibly efficient artifact and enchantment removal spell at just 1 mana, with a laughably irrelevant drawback. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares are both incredibly efficient creature removal spells that should be played in every deck running white. Aura Shards is used as a way to continually blow up your opponent's artifacts and enchantments. It works especially well in this deck since it's so creature heavy. This deck is heavily reliant on our creatures and will have a difficult time recovering from board wipes, or removal of key parts of our deck. The deck runs some protection to prevent our cards from being destroyed and to prevent them from being countered. Azuri Renegade Leader can regenerate our elves, which unfortunately doesn't work against a lot of the board wipes, however it's still a good way to protect our elves. Grand Abolisher prevents your opponents from doing much of anything during your turn. Lightning Greaves can give Shroud to one of your creatures. Angel's Grace doesn't protect your board, but it does keep you from dying. However, it's mostly in the deck to protect us from losing to milling out when going for the mill combo using Selvala. Heroic Intervention protects all your permanents from destroy effects and targeted removal. Savage Summonings is used to make sure the next creature spell you cast doesn't get countered. It's mostly used to get Walking Ballista into play when you're comboing off with Selvala. Veil of Summer protects your spells from counter magic, and you and your permanents from targeted removal from blue and black sources. The deck's creature base is mostly elves, so giving protection to those elves using Cavern of Souls can be incredibly useful, especially in competitive Commander where counterspells run rampant. These are the cards that didn't fall under any of the previous categories. Aven Mind Sensor is an incredibly powerful one-sided anti-tutor effect that can easily shut opponents out of the game, since fetch lands and tutors are so widely used in competitive Commander. Eternal Witness can recur any card from your graveyard. Mirror Entity is used mostly to combo off with Wirewood Symbiote, but it can also be used as a way to pump up your creatures and swing in for some good old-fashioned combat damage. Sun Titan is used to recur the large variety of 3 CMC or less permanents that we run in the deck, including fetch lands. Genesis Wave is a great card to dump a ton of mana into to cheat a bunch of permanents into play from your deck. Selvalla's often overlooked ability to gain life can be taken advantage of using Aetherflux Reservoir. You'd also be surprised how high of a storm count you can get just by chaining low drops together, especially since Selvala can keep feeding your hand. Blind Obedience slows down your opponents, especially their fast mana, and the Extort can be a nice bonus if you're trying to get to 50 plus life for Aetherflux Reservoir. Blue is heavily used in competitive Commander, so if your opponents decide to use an instant like a Counterspell or Cyclonic Rift during your turn, you can use Seed Time to take an extra turn, which should give you ample time to recover from whatever annoying thing that blue player just did. The deck's main way to generate mana is through Mana Dorks, so Winter Orb should hit your opponents harder than you. Concordant Crossroads is used to allow your Mana Dorks to tap for mana as soon as they come into play. These are the lands that we are using in the deck. Luckily, Selesnya is an allied color pairing, so we have access to some of the best land cycles available. Arid Mesa, Flooded Strand, Marsh Flats, Misty Rainforest, Verdant Catacombs, Windswept Heath, and Wooded Foothills are the fetch lands available in the Selesnya color pairing. You definitely want to run all the off-color fetch lands to thin out your deck, so you can get mana more often when you parley. Luckily, Selesnya gets access to a Battle Bond land, which we obviously want to use in this deck. The Pain lands are great lands, especially for a 2-color deck. City Brass and Mana Confluence are slightly worse than the Pain lands in a 2-color deck, but are definitely still worth playing, especially since Selvala is able to mitigate the life loss from these cards. Command Tower is still an obvious include, even in competitive Commander. Dryad Arbor is in the deck so you can grab it using Green Sun Zenith. Gaia's Cradle is an incredibly powerful land, and unfortunately its price reflects this. The deck is very creature heavy, so this land should tap for a decent chunk of mana. Horizon Canopy is an incredibly useful land, especially if you end up getting land flooded, you can sacrifice it for a card. Selvala draws a lot of cards, so the no maximum hand size ability attached to Reliquary Tower can end up being invaluable. Savannah is another obvious inclusion in the deck's land base. Temple Garden is the much more affordable version of Savannah, with a laughably small drawback of having to pay 2 life for it to enter the battlefield untapped. Wirewood Lodge is an untap effect attached to a land, making its inclusion in the deck have a small opportunity cost. Wooded Bastion is another untapped dual land that unfortunately doesn't do much turn 1. Cavern of Souls helps protect our creatures from counter spells. 4 forests and 2 plains fill up the rest of the land base. You should run a somewhat decent amount of basics so you can fetch them up if you already have Temple Garden and Savannah on the battlefield. I want to thank you for watching my deck tech on Selvala Explorer Returned. I'd appreciate if you smash that like button, comment, and subscribe. And again, thank you for watching.